Guys, welcome to the Vlad Catcher Show, the #1 show for founders, execs, and entrepreneurs who are scaling their businesses. This video is presented by Supernormal.com, and we have an amazing interview for you today with its founder and CEO, Colin Treseler, about how he created and scaled the business. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vlad. Good to be here.
So tell us, Colin, what's the origin story? How did Supernormal.com come about?
Yeah, good question. So my co-founder and I, Fabian, we were sitting down in my basement for about 3 weeks trying to figure out what it is we're going to build next. He had just finished up running design at GitHub. I had been working on product and building Instagram search and a bunch of different experiences at Meta. And we were talking about the ways of working inside of those large companies. One of the things that we pulled out was it would be amazing for us to replicate how GitHub was able to scale as a remote company. He was going to be based in New York. I was going to be in Stockholm. And we decided that, okay, what are those 2 or 3 things that really allowed GitHub, which famously became at least 50% remote, to scale and build such an incredible company and organization, but also a workplace and culture. And the thing that we isolated in on was that they had a culture of documenting everything. That if the conversation had happened or you had a meeting and it didn't get documented, they treated it as if it didn't happen. And at the time, this idea that content would be ephemeral inside of a workplace was really counterculture to the ability to go, hey, let's go distributed, let's go remote. Fast forward another month or 2, we were exactly in the right place at the right time to think about, okay, how do we go forward and capture conversations that are happening and then help people build documentation or build things that happen after the meeting. So we set out early days. This is before large language models. AI was, we had machine learning models that could try to help us understand what was important about a conversation, but extremely early days when we were trying to figure out, okay, we have this mountain of information, right? We have this whole voice recording from a 2-hour meeting or an hour-long meeting. How do we get a transcript of that? Okay, now that we've got a transcript, how do we then go pull out the key summary of it? And at the time, not even possible, right? Fast forward a year later, 2 years later, and when GPT 3.5 came out, we found ourselves in a position of, wow, we have this capacity to capture conversations, which is highly unstructured information, and then really ask very pointed questions on behalf of people, on behalf of users to help them figure out, okay, what were those key action items? What were those key takeaways that we had? If you look at where the market is now, 4 or 5, almost now 6 years later, it's kind of ubiquitous, built into every experience that if you have a meeting, you have a conversation, you should have some sort of document that's coming out afterwards. So that's kind of the origin path that we took, and it's been a winding and fascinating road as the market kind of catches up, and where do we take it from here?
Can you tell us more about how Supernormal.com product currently works and some use cases?
Sure. So Supernormal very simply will join your meeting, whether it happens to be a meeting bot that joins the conversation or a Chrome extension that just captures the conversation as it's happening, assigns the speaker labels and understands who's saying what. And the moment the meeting is over, you have roughly about 2.5 seconds, and you have the full output of the conversation, whether it's a summary that you want to share with colleagues or with external parties, all the action items, the key takeaways. We then went further and said, okay, there are roughly 20 different types of meetings that people have inside of the broader knowledge workspace. How do we best serve those? How do we have templates for those experiences? So that's kind of the core underpinning of how Supernormal works today, and works across Zoom and Teams and all the different places that you would have conversations in Google Meet. And is broadly used by a lot of professional services. So I would say a lot of digital agencies, people where they're having kind of almost their meetings are part of their core delivery, whether you're working with clients or you're in sales and working with external parties. So that's kind of the core product today for Supernormal.
Which is joins the meeting, gets you the key takeaways from your meeting, so that way they don't miss anything, right? And so that way they don't miss anything, but also so they actually know what to do. Otherwise, they'll forget some information from the meeting, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's really meant for people who have an insane amount of back-to-back meetings each day, right? So my usual workflow when it was at Meta was, okay, I have, 6 meetings today. I would jot down notes quickly. I would try, if I was really on top of follow-ups, I would get that follow-up email done before the start of my next meeting, but I often didn't have that much time. It would take me 5 or 10 minutes to actually get that piece of work done. So then I would find myself at 5 p.m. every day saying, okay, like, what was that meeting at 11:30 this morning? And what were those key details? And what are those things that I need to push forward? Meanwhile, I've kind of blocked or slowed down my team because that meeting was at 11:30. We made decisions then, and I didn't get those decisions out and populate to everyone else until 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
And supernormal.com, it's a pretty incredible domain name. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I can ever forget the actual domain name, right? Supernormal.com. Like, it's short, it's memorable, like it sticks with you. Was it very expensive to get this domain name, or how were you able to get this awesome domain
It
name?
was. It was. In retrospect, probably not as expensive as other domain names that people get for their companies. We had in 2019, I think we had done a seed round of $2 million. And our lead investor convinced us. They were like, look, this branding, this name is fantastic. You need to own it. You have to get the domain name. So I think we ended up spending, I think it was about $50,000 to get the brand name and the domain name. And it was entirely worth it.
And you guys also created a second product, which is called the Radiant app. Can you tell us more about that, how that works in the use cases?
Sure. So everything we learned from Supernormal is fascinating. So Supernormal has done about 75 million meetings just this year. We've created something like 500 million action items that we've seen people say, okay, yep, they check them off, they do the work, and they get those things done. When we looked at Supernormal, we were saying, okay, well, it's fascinating that we can help you document the conversations, but it's way more interesting if we can help you do the work after the conversation. So if you say that, hey, I need to go update my Jira tool, or I need to go update Linear, or wherever I do my issue tracking, or I need to go make a project plan or a project brief, it would be much more interesting if we could use that conversation that you just had, or all of your meetings, to help craft those documents or write those follow-up emails for you and automate those things. So we started building software. That Supernormal was built as a collaborative tool for you and your team. We had to reimagine how to build software when we decided we want software that collaborates not only just between people, but between people and AI, but between people and an LLM. So it's a very different style of even data, how you structure your data, how you query against it, how you work with it, so that people can work most effectively with AI directly. We're all used to working with AI today through chat, but what does that look like when you and AI are crafting a document together after your meeting? So when we looked back at even just this year of 75 million meetings and all those different action items, we were able to identify there are certain very specific types of work that people need to do beyond just crafting a meeting summary. Meeting summary is just one of those things that you have to do, but maybe you have to go update a presentation, or I love hey, I want to go craft a project plan from this client meeting or this client kickoff that I had. That's what we really decided of, okay, these pieces of work are things that Radiant is able to do, and kind of reimagine from the ground up how this software should look and what the feel should be. Some of that is captured in the idea that Radiant isn't it's not on the web. It actually sits on your computer. So this is a Mac app that you download, and there are a lot of preferences that we learned from Supernormal. People liked having meetings captured and their information captured for them, but they hated meeting bots. They're like, I don't want a bot in the meeting, which I completely understand, right? There's just this other floating object that's in there. It doesn't feel very good. So for us, when we built out Radiant, we built it with the idea that, hey, it lives on your desktop, it captures the audio there, processes all of that audio directly on your device, it's more private and secure, and you don't need to have a meeting bot anymore, which is fantastic.
I have a question about acquisition, Colin, because you've been an entrepreneur for 9 years, long time. That means you have so many different learnings. You also worked at Instagram before that, which is cool. And I'd like to ask, is there any learnings you have for acquiring customers for Supernormal, right? Because acquisition is always so challenging, man. Like, it's always so expensive or so challenging how to do it profitably. Do you have any kind of thoughts on acquisition that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Absolutely. So when I look at building AI products in general, the things that I think about are, okay, what are the new model capabilities? What can models do now? Or what are they going to be able to do in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months? And then you back up from there and you say, okay, great. If a model can write emails extremely well, then how do I create an experience that gets people to have exactly that within 30 seconds of using my software, or within the first 2 minutes or 5 minutes of using my software that I'm giving them? Because those moments of, oh my God, this thing actually did this piece of work for me and it's flawless, or I only had to change one small thing, those are the wow moments or the aha moments that are driving the word of mouth, or what you would expect of like the viral coefficient. Like, how much are people sharing my product with other people? How much are they really talking about it at the water cooler, right? That channel today is probably the most important channel. The second kind of channel of growing products, exemplified by a company that's here in our building, Lovable. They produce what I would call production value. So at Instagram, we thought a lot about production value. And if you think about the core original product of Instagram, it was like, take a photo. It was probably pretty bad, but we gave you a filter, and that filter on top made it look kind of cool. So with just a click of a button, which is like very, very little effort, we gave you a ton of production value. We gave you something beautiful that came out, or aesthetically, you're like, oh, that actually looks really cool. Lovable, Replit, Bolt, with a prompt, they're able to give you a stylized, interesting looking website or page or dashboard that has a ton of production value for the amount of effort that you have to put in. So when we look at the features, the things that we're building inside of Radiant, the effort is almost non-existent, because it's passive. It's just capturing the conversation, capturing the meeting that you just had. But if we give you a full project plan, or here are all the updates for your task management tool directly after your meeting, the wow factor is huge, and the production value is really high. It's just, we saved you not only 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, but 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of effort after every conversation that you have. That's what we're going for. We had a if we look at the last 10 years, so all of my work at Meta, if you look at how we valued and how we thought about our work, it was in time spent. How much time did people spend basically just doing the vertical scroll, right? And interacting with those products. The next 10 years of measuring how well we're building software, which I think is more aligned with doing well for people in general, is time saved. So how much time can we save you in all of the efforts that you have? Because we all have these really amazing devices on our desks, but we're unlocking a tiny, tiny percentage of what they're actually able to do for us.
Colin, I think what you're describing is to wow your customers, wow them quickly, and offer them a lot of value as soon as they use your product. That's kind of what you, I think, describing in the kind of the B2B type of space, right? Did I get that correct? Because then you're saying if you achieve those things, then your word of mouth for your product, the coefficient will be much higher. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's entirely based on what your go-to-market strategy is. If you're building an enterprise piece of software, I saw you had an amazing interview with the CEO of Glean, who I respect very much. He had to stick to his bootstraps and just say, hey, no, we're absolutely building enterprise software. We're not going to go down the path of just building this for engineers or for customer support. And he was right. It takes an insane amount of effort to go build a truly horizontal enough platform for enterprise. If you are not going out and saying, okay, we're going to do enterprise sales, but in fact, this is software that anyone can just open up and start using, which is an amazing growth channel into small, medium, and large businesses, then word of mouth is probably the most important thing that you have, right? If you're spending more than, let's say, 15% of if you break down all your acquisition channels and more than 15% is paid, then you're not going to have a business that's going to scale at the rate that it needs to.
And entrepreneurship, it's really interesting because many things go wrong that you never even anticipate will go wrong or can go wrong, right? It's just an interesting journey with so
Yeah.
many surprises, and you've been an entrepreneur a long time. And the question I'd like to ask you, what are some of your biggest startup lessons post product market fit?
I think building a culture that has tenacity is one of the biggest lessons learned. You're right, things don't always go right. Charts aren't always moving in the right direction, or even when you get product market fit, and we've scaled on Supernormal, we've scaled to 700,000 organizations using the platform, which is fantastic. Still finding people when they join a company that are curious and have the tenacity to keep asking the questions and keep positive about, if a metric is going poorly, the response isn't, it's a bummer, right? And no, it's like, that's a great challenge. How do we look at this with a let's try it mentality? Which really came from, I did a bunch of sports growing up and through university, and had one coach that, he would give us just the worst things to do, right? It was just like, go run up and down this hill 50 times. And at the start of every session, it would be a let's try it, right? And that sort of mood just flipped everyone on to, okay, like, we know we have to go do this hard thing, but let's do it with a smile and keep the mood high as we go through it. That's probably one of the most important pieces in the lessons learned, because you can anticipate that there are going to be some very hard times, and that happens. One other really important lesson learned, I think, for us, and it's serendipitous now that we can use AI to do a lot of work, is keeping the team small and intentionally small. So for the first 4 years of Supernormal, we were really about somewhere between 4 and 5 people. So we were really, really small and very capable, because we were just a group of extremely senior people that could go execute independently, which was critical for remote work, because less senior people can learn so much faster in person. But if you have a team that's fully remote at the time, being very senior was extremely helpful. From a velocity perspective, you could react in your reaction speed in the market, especially in AI. Like this really is a reaction speed market of, like, I spend at least an hour every day keeping up with what's the latest and greatest of model capabilities, or a new model drops here, a new library is here. Your reaction speed to market is critical for the, hey, we want to own the next oh wow moment that your software can bring, against a very competitive field. Like as the cost to deploy new features, new experiences is going towards zero, right? We can vibe code things. There's a reaction speed aspect that I think slows down when you introduce more and more people into an organization. So even today, with the size customer base that we have, we're still only about 20 people.
Yeah. Very senior folks, and I imagine kind of extreme professionals is
Yes.
what I think you're describing. Extreme professionals who are great at what they do and keep the team small, so this way you can get actually so much more done without slowing things down, right?
That's entirely it.
And can you share more with us about your hiring philosophy, Colin? Because hiring is always challenging, and it seems like such a straightforward thing, put the right people in the right places. But dude, it doesn't actually work this way many times in person. Like
No,
when
it
you're
doesn't.
doing it, like.
Yeah.
So, what are some of your kind of biggest hiring lessons, and what is your hiring philosophy?
Early on, it started with the more of the Pixar style model of what have you mastered? Like, what's the one thing in your life that you've mastered? And it doesn't matter what, right? We had a yo-yo world champion or national champion from the US for a long time. That evolved into 2 things for me. When I peeled that apart, I was like, okay, not everyone's mastered or become the top 1% of 1% of something in their life, and that's okay. We get a lot of signal on, do they have the tenacity to go do something repetitive until it was perfect, right? What I actually distilled that out into and evolved was 2 things. One was intense curiosity, because that is hard to teach, and I think it's hard to learn. But if someone is intensely curious, they're much more likely to go well with the ups and downs of startup life of, hey, let's try it, right? Like, hey, something's wrong here. Let's figure out why. So intense curiosity was one piece. The other was what I describe as mental horsepower. So do they have the acuity, the capacity to go work through a problem and think through the problem, and come out with a set of work or a set of suggestions or whatever it might be. that is on par with the rest of the team and how we think about things. To me, mental horsepower is one of the most important things that I screen for immediately.
And what else did you look for in these things, right? So the two key things you're mentioning is intense curiosity and mental horsepower. What else can we do to check that the person is, very curious, and to check that the person does have mental horsepower? What else can we do to kind of check these two things?
So I often try to take something that is topical and entirely separate from what they're experts in. Right? So I will take something, I'll try to have a conversation with someone that is entirely abstract from what they're used to, and seeing how quickly can they pick up the new concepts or the new topics, have opinions about that. And you also get a small measure of creativity there as well, which I think is also really, really important and fits in, kind of makes the trifecta of curiosity and creativity, which I really think creativity is like a muscle. You have to train it. You have to try to do it every single day if you can, in some way, in some clever way. And with mental horsepower, if you throw someone into an entirely new playing field, into a new space, and just say, "Hey, like, let's talk about nuclear reactors and like what should that look like," right? And frankly, like, no one here is a nuclear expert, and that's okay. Then you find really interesting things come out, and what sort of like breadth of knowledge does this one person have in general, whether it's things that they remember from high school physics or from an English course that they took. These are the things that I look for.
Is there an interview question you like to ask candidates? For example, Peter Thiel has that question where he asks, "Tell me something that you believe is true that most people would disagree with you on." Is there something like that that you like to ask candidates?
I don't. In fact, it's interesting. I've never referred to one specific question for this. It's more that I'm trying to guide them to get into a storytelling mode. And I might set the topic. I might try to pick a topic that's further away from the type of work that they generally do, or the area that they're comfortable with. But it allows me to see them think on their feet and try to have that conversation in more of a storytelling setting. I find people's ability to tell stories is a like direct correlating factor to how well they're going to communicate at work.
And how do we get them to tell stories? Like, do you ask them, like, tell me a story of your life, kind of from X point, from this point till now, or how do we get them to tell stories, Colin?
Yeah, so I'll have them kind of paint the scene, right? So I had one interview where a candidate was telling me what it was like to be in the rowing race for Oxford versus Cambridge, and I was like, great, like, paint the scene for me. Like, what was that like? Well, he was like, well, the scene really starts 9 months previous, when training kicks off and the selection and the whole thing just to make the boat. And what does that look and feel like, right? And that became our Sarah became our head of marketing, because her capacity to tell that story, and I could really empathize with the effort that went into, and the slog and the ups and downs of that experience, and making the boat and competing and winning the race and things like that. It was more about the journey than the destination.
I have a question about the job of a CEO, Colin, because as CEOs of tech companies, we do so many different jobs. We just do, right? You probably do many different things, man.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the core job of a tech startup CEO after product market fit?
I think this breaks into probably two or three different categories. The first is, my father was an Olympic coach for the sport of running in the U.S. So I grew up going to the track with him most nights, until 8 or 9 o'clock, and watching him train some of the elite, some of the best in the U.S., and watched him as a coach. And he could keep 10 different training groups in his head going around the track, knowing what each person is supposed to be doing, and where they are in their plan. But the thing that he was extremely good at was adjusting the individual or the group to periodicity. So this idea that you're not going to be at your peak performance all the time, and in fact you need to have a variation in the delivery and the output that you're doing as an athlete. And I find the same thing in work. So our team goes through sprints or cycles, where subconsciously, I think it's felt of like, oh, this week's going to be really intense. Like the intensity is going to be really high. We need to get these things out. And the next week might even be more intense. But at some point, you're going to need a third week that's not as intense, or a recovery week. As a founder who's found product market fit and going through okay, we're scaling into larger companies and enterprises and those things, I've learned that you can't keep the pedal to the metal every single week and run a team that can produce its best possible work. I think that work actually comes in cyclical patterns, and it's very similar to how my father would do training with the best possible athletes. Right? It's not a lack of trying or a lack of capacity. But if you run an athlete at full tilt for 8 weeks in a row, then bad things will happen. I think that there's a lot of wonderful things that come out as you start ramping up into these cycles. But very, very important pieces from a coaching perspective is that when you're running a team, running an organization, you have to be thinking about the velocity that team's moving at, and the intensity of work that they have over a 4-week stretch or a 6-week stretch, and intentionally saying, you know what, yes, we want to get all these features out, but this week, instead of these 8 features that we're trying to build, we're just going to build 4 features this week, or we're going to build 5 features. In fact, this week we're just going to go back and build 2 features, and then think about the other stuff that we can do and take a broader step back. That's been incredibly helpful for keeping the same 20 people working and being extremely effective over the longer stretch of time.
Well, Colin, I'm really grateful you came on the show and shared the journey, talked about supernormal.com, talked about your product Radiant. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers before we log off?
Vlad, it's been a pleasure. It's been tons of fun, and I think that's it. I think we're good. This was great.
Cool. All right, Colin. Thank you, man. See you.
Take care.